Am I the a-hole for contaminating honey with peanut butter and not telling my peanut allergic housemate? Yeah, this sounds bad, but hear me out. I live with fake name who's allergic to peanuts. He says it's fine if I eat them around him, but be careful with cross-contamination. I limit my peanut consumption. Don't eat peanuts food around him just in case, and I'm careful when I do. I clean everything after. I don't want to take any risks because it's not my risk to make. 2 years and not a problem, until last week. I have a doting mother who loves giving fancy gifts. Like my Easter basket this year, which had not much in the way of chocolate, but much in the way of homemade preserves, and a jar of honey. Not your supermarket plastic tub, but a proper glass jar. It looked so fancy I expected to see the names of the bees listed on it. Nope, just the location the bees lived in. Now, we have some food rules. Bottle of milk in the fridge? Ours. The fancy honey with my name stuck on it for good measure. Mine. We're pretty good with not stealing each other's food, so I feel pretty safe with leaving fancy stuff in the kitchen. Only I don't have much opportunity to eat fancy honey. I mean, pretty sure you're meant to do something special with fancy honey, right? Probably, but I don't know what. So last week, when I made myself some toast, I made a childhood favorite. Peanut butter and honey on toast. And because it was my honey with my name taped across the top, I don't think twice before dipping that peanut butter knife in my fancy honey. Probably a waste of fancy honey, but we were out of regular honey. After, I washed the knife and plate before putting them into the dishwasher and wiped down the bench just in case. I wasn't home a couple of days later when fake name decided to help himself to my honey. Now, following a hospital trip, he's home safe and we've had a chat about how to prevent such things in the future, but the question has arisen. Who here is the a-hole? Me for not writing contains nuts on the contaminated honey despite knowing my fake name is allergic? Or fake name for looking at my fancy honey and deciding to help himself to just a little bit? I mean, it's pretty annoying to have someone else eat your food, but the punishment shouldn't be a potential death sentence. And let's face it, who hasn't swiped just a little bit of a spread or condiment which doesn't belong to them? And time to fess up here, I'm the reason we were out of regular honey. We can't decide, so tell me Reddit, am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. This never would have happened if your roommate hadn't helped himself to your food without asking. This is all on him. Just a quick, hey, can I have a bit of your fancy honey? Would have prevented this entire situation, as you obviously would have told him, nah bro, I double-dipped a peanut butter knife in that. Ask before you help yourself to other people's things. If I was OP, I would straight up tell him not to touch any of my foods or condiments going forward. But the roommate sounds like he is not the type to take personal responsibility for himself and blames other people for his mistakes. I would dare to say he would probably be quick to pursue a lawsuit if he suffered severe injuries. Don't let him misconstrue your past generosity as an open-door policy of helping himself. Explicitly tell him no. I don't know. It sounds more like this is a friendly debate they're having here than that he is about to call his lawyers. But maybe I'm getting the tone wrong. Not the a-hole. Your roommate learned to leave other people's things alone. When you're highly allergic to foods, you only eat things you know are safe. If he hadn't been eating something that didn't belong to him, he would have been fine. Exactly. Not the a-hole. With allergies, your roommate should have been more careful and only use stuff he knew was his. Not the a-hole. He knows and has approved you eating peanut products in the house. Therefore, he knows there's a risk of cross-contamination with your foods. Something clearly labeled as yours is therefore not guaranteed safe. And the onus is on him to check with you around cross-contamination before helping himself to it. It's not unreasonable for him to have a bit. It's unreasonable, and therefore he's the a-hole, to blame you for his emergency when you had already taken steps to make it clear this was for you only. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for not giving my neighbor's kids good food? So, I know that this is really stupid, but some of my friends told me that I'm in the wrong here. To get started, here's our cast. Me, female 38, neighbor female 32, my husband, male 39, kid 1, male 8, kid 2, male 7, my kid, female 8. My neighbor moved in not too long ago with her 2 sons. Seeing that she had a lot of unpacking to do, I went over to her house and offered to babysit her kids for her. She thanked me and walked her kids over to my house. I kept some of my son's toys from when he was younger, he has moved out already, and set them up in my yard. My daughter is fairly extroverted and immediately went outside to play with them. It was around noon at the time, so I started to make lunch. I made some turkey sandwiches with American cheese, a simple lunch that we always have. I brought out some plates so that the kids could eat outside on our benches. The kids loved it, and 30 minutes later the sandwiches were gone and they were back playing soccer and tag. A few hours later, the neighbor's kids and my child marched inside and sat down, tired. I put on some cartoons and told them I would be right back as I left to go get the neighbor to pick up her children. She looked tired, but was happy that she didn't have to deal with little boys running around while she unpacked. She came over and took her boys. By this time, my husband was parking in our driveway, home from work. My daughter had a fun time telling her father all about her day while I ordered pizza on my phone. About 5 minutes later, while I was still asking what everyone wanted, I hear a knock on my door. It was the neighbor. I thought she was going to thank me again, but she got angry and shouted at me. The following is some basic dialogue from what I can remember, though this did happen a few weeks ago. Me: "Oh, hey neighbor." Neighbor: "Look, we need to talk right now." Me: "Oh sure, what do you need?" Neighbor: "Well, my sons told me that you gave them sandwiches for lunch." Me: "Yes, I did. They really like..." Neighbor: "Well, that is not enough for my boys. They're growing boys, and they need to have good food, and not whatever you gave them." Me: "Really?" Neighbor: "Yes." Me: "No." And I shut the door in her face. My daughter didn't really hear any of our conversation, but she asked me. I just told her that the neighbor didn't like sandwiches. She didn't bother to ask further and watched some shows in her room. My husband just laughed, and so did I. The lady got mad that I fed food to her sons for free, right? But as it turns out, 3 of my close friends told me that I was rude and I should have just given them something better. We had mashed potatoes and some leftover pork that wouldn't take more than 29 minutes to heat up and serve, but I didn't feel like giving them that. I don't see the problem with what I did, but I trust my friends and I want to know if I should apologize. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. I feel like an absurd number of people ate a turkey sandwich for lunch today, and they're probably going to continue with their lives happily. No good deed goes unpunished, I guess. Hope she doesn't ever need a neighbor to babysit in a jam. I know I did. It was delicious. I made my kids grilled cheese for lunch. Am I going to hell? 20 years from now, when those kids are doing hard time in the penitentiary, it's all going to trace back to that goddamn turkey sandwich. You might be onto something here. Statistically speaking, probably a lot of people currently incarcerated in the US have had a turkey sandwich. Day after Thanksgiving is the worst for crime. That's why it's called Black Friday. Not day hall. I thought the issue was going to be allergy or religion related. I do think you should have confirmed with your neighbor about the food because that easily could have become a disaster. That being said, I don't know why a turkey sandwich is bad or why your neighbor and friends think they needed something better. I think if you have children with food allergies and you drop them off with a brand new neighbor you've never even met before so you can unpack, you should absolutely be telling this person about your children's allergies, not expecting them to come back and ask what's okay to serve for lunch. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my roommate I'm no longer okay with her boyfriend staying 5 to 7 nights a week? I've been living with my roommate, ex-best friend, since last August. When we signed the lease, I told her that moving in with one roommate, her, was already a big compromise for me as I really value my alone time and having a safe and quiet place. We discussed her boyfriend coming over a couple times a week. At the time it was on the weekends and once during the week, and that includes staying the night. And even that agreement was excessive for me, but I was willing to work with it. Since then, her boyfriend has been over 5+ nights a week every single week. In the last 10 days, he has been back at his own house one time. He showers here, does his laundry here, eats food here. I tried so hard to bite my tongue because my roommate was my best friend for a long time, but she completely disrespected my boundaries. I asked her a few months back if he could be here less because I was having a hard time settling into my apartment on the weekends because I never had space to utilize common areas without him just being there all the time. She flipped out and told me I have no right to determine how often he's here. Last night, I lost my cool and texted her, asking if he moved in without me knowing because it had been that long since I last had a night without him here. She said no and persisted that it wasn't my business. He is loud and messy and doesn't pay a dime to live here when he already lives at his parents' house for free. We're in our mid-20s, not even 19 or early 20s. Am I the a-hole for standing my ground and asking, as the other person who pays the bills, that he be here less frequently than 5 to 7 nights a week? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. She has basically moved him in without your or your landlord's permission. He pays no rent or utilities and is loud. If she refuses to either have him move out again or pay his part of the rent, etc., you might approach the landlord. You're usually obliged to get a landlord's permission before moving in an extra person. OP should really just start looking for their own place, because I don't see the roommates making nice if they are ex-friends. Agreed. If they complain to the landlord, he might agree to release them from the lease early, or kick the roommates out. That's how I'd approach it at least. Not a-hole. If he's not contributing to the house while using all the utilities and food, that's a huge problem in itself. Also, you're entitled to have your house to yourself sometimes. I would tell her she either sticks to your original agreements or you're telling the landlord. Bringing the landlord in may create as much trouble for OP as it does for the others. If the landlord decides to evict, OP is getting evicted too. OP is quite possibly in violation of their lease right now. Not the a-hole. She flipped out and told me I have no right to determine how often he's here. That's where she's wrong. Is his name on the lease? Rhetorical question. I see it's not. I'd start looking for another roommate ASAP. In the meantime, I'd approach the landlord/leasing office and inform them that your roommate has basically moved someone into your place despite your objection. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for assuming I wouldn't have to pay rent? Around 7 years ago, a very good friend of mine moved away to a different country and sold me her house. She met this guy there and had a baby. 2 years after moving there and having the baby, her and her husband wanted to move back here to expand their family. She asked if she could stay with me in a spare room while she saved up some money to purchase a home. I happily said yes, since she was kind enough to let me buy her home for less, and she was also one of my bestest friends. So, I let them move into the basement, rent-free, because I know they needed more space than just a room with a toddler. My boyfriend runs his own business, and he employed her while she was trying to get a job, and he was only paying her like $200 cash weekly, and he didn't really need someone anyway, so it was just something temporary. The basement didn't have a kitchen, so they would come up to cook and eat, and I gave them access towards all my food. She would also buy groceries and told us that it's for all of us to share. I knew her husband had money and was retired, but still receiving money on a monthly basis from his country. I guess equivalent to a pension? But I have clue as to what that amount was. But he did not work while he was here. She's also decently wealthy, and we would constantly go shopping together and out to eat, and she would spend a good amount of money. She ended up staying for 4 years, which is longer than anticipated, and during that time, we talked about adding a bathroom for them, and her husband offered to do the work, so we didn't have to hire a company. We paid to add a bathroom, kitchen, and separate the empty floor plan to 2 bedrooms. This was mostly for their convenience, but we were planning on doing something along those lines in the future. She also stayed working for my boyfriend for the $200 weekly, even after we all found some jobs she qualified for. She now owns her own house and is renting out the 2nd floor. My boyfriend and I are in the process of buying a new home and completely renovating it and want to sell our current home ASAP. But we have to rent out somewhere to stay for a few months. We asked if we can stay in her unfinished basement, when she then informed us that the people living in the 2nd floor have moved out and offered for us to stay there instead. My boyfriend and I were ecstatic and agreed and sold our house and have to move out in 2 weeks. We all met up for dinner this weekend and she tells us how much our rent should be. I explained to her that we weren't planning on paying rent and why she didn't tell us about it sooner, and she asked why we assumed it would be free. In all honesty, I can afford rent, and it is cheaper than an Airbnb, but I just felt that after what we did for them, it should have been free. Let me know. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. They lived rent-free for 4 years and can't let you crash for a couple of weeks? That's really crappy. I'd hazard she only offered you the second floor for that very reason. I'd go stay in a hotel and avoid giving them your money if they can't see reason. Added to add, maybe present them with what their rent would have been had you charged them what they want to charge you. Obviously, you can't go back on this and ask for it, but maybe it will put into perspective just how much they saved. Thank you so much for the input. My boyfriend and I are currently looking for other options. Feel kind of weird for being like, this is how much you were to owe me if I wasn't such a nice person, because I didn't do it expecting anything in return. Not the a-hole. Please, examine your relationship with this fair-weather friend. I mean, you could mention that you thought it would be free, as you did let her live in yours for 4 years, and renovated it for her without so much as charging her a cent. Which is why you didn't think that you would have to pay rent. She'd probably be mortified to reveal a different color to that you have seen. I know. I valued our friendship so much, and when I did a favor, I always thought she'd do the same for me. Well, I guess I was wrong about that. Very obviously not the a-hole. It's a simple tit-for-tat situation. You could have been making money from that basement for 4 years, but instead chose to let your friend live rent-free there out of the kindness of your own heart. I would kill to have friends as generous as you, Opie. From what you've established about their financial situation, she doesn't need to rent money. If that's the case, there's no reason why they can't pay you back for your years of generosity by letting you live rent-free for a few months. Given the fact that she overstayed her welcome, maybe she's worried you'll do the same to her, and that's why she wants to implement some kind of financial control here. Thank you so much. I feel extremely betrayed by her, and I've never felt that before because she always been equally as generous except the situation, which is why this is so hard for me to process.